Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on a really crucial modern puzzle. How the channel you actually pick for a conflict.
Yeah.
How that dictates the ultimate damage.
Exactly. We're looking at one individual, Cybergirl10, who was, well, juggling three pretty intense battles all at once.
Right. There was an unresponsive lawyer, an abusive ex-husband, the sources call pathologically rigid, and her fiancé, Alberto.
And here's the core puzzle we really need to unpack for you. Why did the conflict with the fiancé, with Alberto, become objectively the most destructive? I mean, even compared to dealing with, chronic financial loss, legal fights, a narcissistic ex.
It feels backwards, doesn't it? You'd think those long-term legal things would cause the biggest blow-up.
Completely counterintuitive. So our mission today is really to analyze the channel, the content, the whole psychological backdrop for all three communications.
By comparing what she did in those first two conflicts, we can maybe figure out what made that public attack on Alberto just so deliberately damaging, both ethically and relationally.
Yeah, and to start, you really can't grasp the level of damage without understanding the venue. Where this confrontation with Alberto actually happened, it wasn't just a nasty text or a furious email.
Right, this wasn't like shouting into the void online. It took place in Alberto's X spaces, which the sources flag immediately as a digital campfire. What does that term tell us about the trust there?
Oh, it tells us everything. It means this space was built on extraordinary trust. These forums, they were intentionally long form, sometimes 4 or 5 hours long, and built on this idea of radical inclusion.
Alberto's guiding principle as host was no opino, no juzgo, escucho a todos.
I don't opine, I don't judge, I listen to all. That was the bedrock.
And that mix is key, isn't it? It's a place where, they talk high-level text, cybersecurity threats, complex digital forensics.
But they also use that trust to share incredibly raw personal stuff. People talking about PTSD, ongoing legal battles, really vulnerable things.
Okay, so that combination fosters a massive amount of vulnerability. A kind of high-stakes social contract gets formed. You share something deep here, it'll be respected.
Exactly. And when CG10 launched her attack, she wasn't just having a private argument. She publicly, and it seems intentionally, shattered that foundational contract. She basically weaponized the community's trust and loyalty against its own host. The platform itself became the weapon.
Wow. Okay, that contrast, high-trust platform, high betrayal act, that's critical. So let's hold that context, the trust and the digital artifact it created, and look at the other two conflicts she was managing, because this is where the sources show undeniable proof of, well, conscious choice.
This comparison is absolutely the core of our deep dive today. Let's take conflict 1, Mr. Cringes, the lawyer. Okay, unresponsive for 4 months, causing real financial stress, mental health impact. CG10 had every reason to be furious.
And the sources show she handled it. Well, impeccably, professionally speaking. The channel, private professional correspondence, a formal letter or email to his firm.
The content was structured. A complaint about competence, communication failure, severe criticism, yes, totally warranted, but
It was kept within the appropriate professional boundary, no public shaming.
she knew the rules of engagement there. Now, look at conflict 2. The ex-husband, Princess. Described as pathologically abusive, financially rigid, trying to pressure her into a bad deal on shared assets. That's huge provocation, right? Chronic emotional and financial stress.
And again, discipline. The channel was private texts, maybe voice calls, the content. Strictly transactional. Demands about selling the asset.
And crucially, she framed it correctly. Talk to your lawyer. She respected the need for formal legal channels, kept the emotional volatility private.
Okay, so stepping back.
Yeah.
CG10 clearly demonstrated she could respect high-stakes professional and private boundaries. When she felt the target's the lawyer, the legally represented ex required it.
Which is precisely why the public attack on Alberto feels different. It wasn't just a fight that spilled over. The second she moved that domestic issue into the X-space public, recorded, it became a deliberate tactical choice.
Not a mistake then. A tactical power play, as the sources put it, designed for maximum impact. And this brings in the digital artifact idea again, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Complaints against the lawyer or ex, they're private, probably temporary records, not easily searchable.
But the attack on Alberto, that became permanent,
Yes.
searchable, public, forever tied to his professional identity online.
She wasn't just venting at him, she was crafting a permanent weapon against him.
So why? Why choose maximum force against the fiancé Alberto when she showed restraint with the abusive ex and the negligent lawyer? The source material points clearly to a psychological mechanism, displaced aggression.
Right. We need to understand her state of mind first. The sources talk about structural powerlessness. Think about it. She's dealing with two massive chronic stressors she can't really affect.
The legal system that isn't responding through the lawyer, and this immovable narcissistic ex-husband. She's blocked, essentially.
Exactly. Blocked from any effective confrontation with the real sources of her frustration and anger. They were inaccessible or maybe too risky to confront directly, legally, or financially.
So the rage had to go somewhere else.
It got redirected. It's like, punching a wall because you can't punch the earthquake that shook your house. That's displaced aggression. You redirect that intense frustration onto a target that's safer, more accessible, and crucially, more vulnerable. In this case, Alberto.
And the trigger, his withdrawal or ghosting, was maybe disproportionate to the sheer force of the attack that followed.
That's what the sources suggest. The emotional force seemed out of sync with the immediate relationship issue. But hang on. Couldn't this just be a really bad fight? People under immense stress lash out unfairly sometimes. Why do the sources insist the ambush was strategic, controlling?
That's a fair question, but look at the sequence the sources lay out. Alberto tries to de-escalate. He tries to set a boundary. He says, reasonably, call me back in an hour, trying to move it private.
And her response is the public controlling demand, call me now.
Rejecting the off-ramp.
Exactly. That specific move signals the aggressive intent. It was designed, it seems, to strip him of privacy right there in front of everyone, force him to comply, and use the audience as social pressure.
Ensuring it wasn't just a fight, but a performance of his humiliation, creating that permanent, searchable digital artifact of vulnerability. That makes the difference.
The public, indelible nature of it, yeah.
And the harm from that digital artifact, it can be profound. But the sources highlight one specific action that elevates the ethical breach way beyond just a relationship conflict.
You mean introducing the minor child situation?
Yeah, that seems to be flagged as the absolute line crossed.
Without a doubt, this is seen as the most egregious breach in the whole comparison. CG10 didn't just complain about the relationship, she publicly attacked Alberto on a deeply sensitive family matter, his parenting.
Using that direct quote, do you think that it's okay that you tell me that I have 5 minutes time to talk to my 11-year-old girl when they come home after 2 weeks?
Putting the child's specific age, sensitive living details, visitation conflicts, putting all that into a recorded, public, international forum, that's crossing an irrevocable line. It's a public violation of a non-consenting minor's privacy, seemingly just to score points in an argument.
And interestingly, the severity wasn't just theoretical. A co-host, Cindy, jumped in immediately.
Yeah, she validated the breach instantly by saying something like, let's drop it just because I heard a kid involved, so yeah, let's not anymore. That immediate reaction from a third party really underscores the ethical failure.
But we also need to connect this back to Alberto's known state at the time. CG10 knew he was vulnerable, right?
Explicitly. The sources state she was aware he was emotionally being really struggling badly with severe mental health issues. His withdrawal, the so-called ghosting, might well have been a sign of internal collapse or depression, not malice.
So she knew she was targeting someone in a fragile state, and she chose to hit the most sensitive areas, his role as a parent. Family secrets.
Absolutely. This moves beyond a messy breakup fight into what the sources call a profound breach of duty of care within that partnership. It looks like calculated infliction of acute trauma on someone whose vulnerability she knew intimately. It shatters the very foundation of safety a partnership should have.
Okay, let's connect this back to the bigger picture for you, the listener. Understanding the severity often involves looking at the legal system. When victims of this kind of public shaming want justice, where do they usually turn first?
Well, often the first thought is defamation law. Makes sense, right? Your reputation's been harmed publicly.
But as we touched on, defamation has a key requirement, proving a false statement of fact.
And that's the problem. Aggressors like CG10 often use private facts that are technically true, like the custody details. They might be shared maliciously, devastatingly, but if they're true.
Defamation likely fails. Truth is usually a defense, even if sharing that truth was incredibly harmful.
Precisely, which often forces victims down a much harder legal path, trying to prove intentional infliction of emotional distress, or IIED.
And that standard is notoriously high, isn't it? Why is IID so difficult to prove in these kinds of digital conflicts?
Because the law demands proof of extreme and outrageous conduct. Conduct that is intolerable in a civilized society. It's an incredibly high bar.
So everyday online nastiness, even really vicious stuff, often doesn't meet that threshold in court.
Rarely. For a court to agree, the behavior usually has to be genuinely shocking to an average person. And unfortunately, the often aggressive, fluid norms of online spaces can make conduct that causes profound harm seem, well, not quite intolerable in that strict legal sense.
So the very structural powerlessness CG10 felt facing her lawyer and ex. It's almost mirrored in the legal system's struggle to provide a remedy for the damage she inflicted on Alberto. There's a gap in digital tort law here.
That seems to be the tragic reality. Severe emotional harm caused by this kind of displaced aggression, amplified by public platforms, often just falls through the cracks legally.
So pulling it all together, the conflict with Alberto stands out as the most severe because it was this perfect storm, wasn't it?
It seems so. It combines CG10's displaced rage, rooted in those external inaccessible pressures, with a very calculated tactical choice of a public, permanent platform.
And the results were devastating. Betrayal trauma, public humiliation impacting his professional standing, and, maybe worst of all, the permanent violation of a child's privacy.
And that creation of the permanent, searchable digital artifact is just final. It obliterates the foundation of intimate trust. The chances of repairing that relationship, extremely poor. The record is always there.
Which leaves us with a really challenging final thought for you to consider. When these relational conflicts spill into global digital spaces, the legal side gets messy.
Yeah, the source material points out something important. Defendants can actually use the legal process itself as a weapon, filing motions to dismiss based on jurisdiction issues, for example. It's procedural friction used strategically.
To basically raise the cost of fighting back, make it too expensive, too draining for the victim to pursue justice.
Exactly. It becomes a way to deplete their resources, psychologically and financially. So the final question for you is this: how can legal systems possibly evolve to give real help to victims of this kind of emotional abuse when the aggressor can use the legal process itself as another weapon?
A tough question indeed about weaponizing both digital platforms and legal procedures. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.